for the microphones, that would be great. And we will call the meeting to order and start with a roll call, please.
Councillor Bosmans.
Present.
Councillor Buell.
Here.
Councillor Baxter.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Youssef.
Yes, present here.
And Mayor Noseworthy.
And because Mayor Noseworthy is gone is why I am leading the meeting for her. And so we will miss her tonight. The theme of our meeting tonight is environmental sustainability and resiliency. And we're going to start with information only items. No, we're going to start with a future new business. So do we have any new business, council?
I had 2 items that I wanted to check with council.
Okay.
The first one is the, let me just word this correctly. The, I'm having a blank.
Okay, start with the second.
Yeah, I have to, give me 1 second. I'll
No
pull up
problem.
the official.
Okay, do you want me
language.
to start with a different counselor if another counselor has any?
Yeah.
While you get your notes ready. Does anybody else have any? No, Jessica, Kim? No?
You.
I don't, because I was going to talk about spring cleanup, but we're going to talk about that at a future date.
Yeah.
So we're all set.
Okay.
We could, are you ready? Because
Yeah.
okay.
So the first one is on training. I was looking to see if there's council support to provide, to direct staff to provide training on how to hold meetings, what the Robert's rules of engagement are. I think we all know the reasons why. I don't need to explain it. And I think we can all use a little reminder
Yeah.
on that topic.
I believe we brought this up or was brought up one other time.
I did
and
bring it
Dirk,
up once.
You said that there were, well, in our onboarding, we had, there was a conference that was available in our onboarding when I was elected, Olivier, that you could do separately that, and I don't know if Olivier did that or not, but I don't know, I believe you suggested some other things potentially.
Yeah, in fact, I think CML has some new materials out.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to review it yesterday, but it was actually a
Olivia.
webinar yesterday on meeting protocols and the like, but I haven't yet reviewed it, but I don't know if that's what you're after, or if we're actually having a live presentation of some sort. Do that as well.
I think council performance would be improved if we all get a refresher course on what the rules are of meetings and how to, I don't want to hash out the issues we all face. We've seen emails, so I think we would be coming across as more professional if we just have that refresher and maybe.
You know, it's interesting that you bring it up. I think I was the one that brought it up last time. You know, kind of saying, you know, as we all go through these different cycles of being mayor and stuff, that it is helpful to get these refreshers on Robert's Rules of Orders. It may help us run more efficient meetings. I would not be opposed to it. The individual that may be helpful is the one who wrote that. I think Bob Weisner, and he's the president of the CML board. He's a really great guy, and he wrote that short version.
Robert's Rules of Order by Bob.
So I don't know if he does presentations. Jose, do you know?
I do not.
Or Dirk, do you know?
Actually, Bob was the one who put it on this webinar yesterday, and I didn't have time to sit and watch it live, but it's recorded. So I do know that he presented, I think his presentation was broader than just Robert's rules. I think it was about engagement between councilors and how to conduct meetings and so forth. So, but I don't know whether he travel here or would be willing to set up a teleconference of some sort, but we could certainly require.
I think the challenge is that there's a lack of understanding of the process and that what the definition of things are and what is to be discussed under those definitions. For example, future business or future agenda items is not a time for discussion of a topic. It's a time to find out whether or not council wants to add a future agenda item or to ask a question about our agenda for the next meeting. And if wants to be a conversation about a topic, then that needs to be asked of council rather than just being done. And then council either agrees, yes, let's discuss that at a future time. Because I think what was happening in these instances was there was a kind of like a one-person discussion going on about a topic that wasn't on the agenda. And actually, in one case, it was on the agenda for later that day, and then was not brought up during that agenda item. So I think there's a concern about an understanding of process. And that's really the critical issue for me. I think, I don't think there's anything else except that lack of understanding of process and what the agenda means and what should be discussed in those areas.
Okay.
We can make it both. Maybe there's council support for a little training session on process as well as rules of the meetings, what can and cannot be done, and if interruptions take place, how you interrupt.
If we could do it in a relatively expeditious way, I mean, like, you know, I wouldn't mind dedicating a couple hours to it. We have a lot of meetings, and so I want to be a little bit respectful of council time, but I would be willing myself to participate in a couple hour training, and also would consider if there's other alternatives. I'd look into live training, or I would look into webinar training if that's most effective and cost effective for the city. That's my position.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea because I think otherwise these inability to follow process is going to continue. So I think that it would be a really good idea to actually have an education on that and to come to an understanding about what that means.
Okay.
Because I don't think it's in our best interest as a council for this to continue.
Right.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank
Councilor
you.
Bosman?
Second topic I have is, and this would be potentially a future request for a future agenda item or clarification if it's even possible at this point.
Mhm.
We had an executive session 2 weeks ago, it must have been 2 weeks ago. And I'll just quote, to discuss potential purchase, acquisition, lease, sale, transfer of real property regarding Buckley Park, Carnegie Building, and other city facilities. And it was to discuss matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiation, or instructing negotiators. And I have to be careful because this is confidential, and this is where my concern lies, and where I would like to see if there's council support for a future agenda item or clarification by listing a large number of items, general term, and restricting council to discuss these items. The agenda today includes some of those items. In theory, we are violating the confidentiality of the executive meeting. I think it is, as an elected official, I feel that it is needed for me to be able to speak freely with our community on a lot of these items. I personally, as one councillor, am not privy to any of the confidential nature items, as in, I'll use the words here again, negotiation or developing strategies, instructing negotiators. And so I feel it as my obligation, almost my duty as an elected official, to be able to discuss those items. So is it worthwhile considering a future executive session to clarify to what degree confidentiality applies when any of us speak to our community about any of these items? Or is there a way to clarify it now?
I don't really know what you're asking.
Yeah.
I think I understand.
The list of items that were presented during that executive session are all considered confidential.
Right.
So
The entire conversation of the executive session.
So these items, even though some of them are listed, Buckley Park, Carnegie Building, theoretically imply that we cannot discuss this. So-
You can't discuss those properties within the context of the discussion that took place.
Right.
So if you want to talk about Buckley Park, you can talk about Buckley Park all you want, as long as it's not in the context of that, it's executive session conversation. So as long as you're not revealing the conversation about Buckley Park that was in that executive session.
I think it requires some better clarification, because I had a verification with Dirk, and I got the impression that we should not discuss any of those items.
I think any of those items, I think this might be another good thing that like understanding and process and where it falls and all that stuff, that it's not, you're not understanding quite, like in the context of that could jeopardize. I mean, you were
negotiations.
Yeah, the negotiations. Thank you. I was like, from happening, right? Like in that context. And so, I mean, you can talk about Buckley Park. The city is making every effort possible to, or we are going to, maintain Buckley Park and keep Buckley Park as it is. And, that is important to communicate to our community. It's not important to communicate some of the other things. And I also think the community knows that there's certain things we can't discuss. And I think that that's okay. I don't think that's a bad.
The
Well, I
how
think it is-
we acquired Buckley Park. We can't, if that was part of, if what you want to talk about is how we acquire it, and that was part of the executive session, you can't talk about that right now.
I understand
So
the answer that you're giving, but I think we need to be very clear on what is defined as confidential and what is not confidential. And during that meeting, I personally believe there was not really anything that was discussed that is confidential.
Oh, I would disagree with that.
There's a lot.
During that meeting,
Oh, yes.
you already mentioned negotiations. It's in here, and that's the key thing. We did not discuss any details or how or what to the level that I feel that would be confidential.
Well, so I guess this kind of
That's why the
ties in
clarity
with your
needs-
previous question.
Right.
I think there's a lack of understanding here on your part about this. I feel pretty clear about what I can talk about and what I can't talk about. So maybe a training that you might take, or maybe if there's other counselors who aren't clear about that also, I'm sure Dirk could arrange something, whether he does it himself or he has someone else come in.
You said you've already spoken with Dirk?
I verified some items, and to me, it came across. I'll word these things very general
So,
because
Dirk, maybe you could help here then.
Sure.
Well, I think the question was after the executive session, you asked, and again, this is difficult to talk about because we don't accidentally want to.
that's why I wanted to have a
Territory,
future
so-
executive session. on
Yeah.
this topic.
But we can't.
Right.
Future
so-
Can't go into executive session to
Future.
discuss.
Right.
Future.
Right, and that's why I suggest,
Can't.
and to be clear, we did have a conversation earlier today when Councilor Bosman asked about this item, and I suggested that the only way that we could have another discussion about the details of the confidentiality would be to have another executive session to receive legal advice on that topic. That's up to council as to whether or not you want to do that. So otherwise, I don't know that I have a whole lot to add, except to say that I would agree that any discussion that involves the topics that were the focus of that executive session are still confidential and should be kept so.
Would you be comfortable, Councillor Bosmans, if the next time we went into executive session to continue the discussion that we had in the previous executive session, if we started that executive session with an explanation of exactly what can be, basically
a good
answer your
solution.
questions? Would you be comfortable with that? Because
I think
I
that
would be
a good-
happy with clarifying that with you and making sure that we all fully understand. I think some counselors feel that they have a good understanding, but it's always a very good topic to remind ourselves of really in every situation, because it's very serious. So I'd be very willing to have that conversation if we could tie it in with the next time we go into executive session to continue that conversation.
And I would suggest we do it at the end of the executive session also.
Good idea.
Because we might talk about something that we didn't
That's
talk
right.
about in the beginning.
Yeah.
So
Is that,
I
would
think
that,
that's a good idea.
all right, okay, let's do that. So it's good for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay,
Works for me.
all right, I don't think we have any other future new business, correct? Everybody's good? Okay, maybe we can take a few minutes if you guys want to review the agenda for the next study session. Has everyone seen it? We don't see
I
copies
didn't
here.
see it.
She sent it out.
Probably on the dice.
But I thought maybe if we have a few minutes, take a look at that. Thank you. Good one.
They were on the dice. We just moved
Okay,
them
no
in. Sorry about that.
I didn't have time to look at the email before I came over.
And here's the seat. Here's that. So, I think actually it's all the same. In case there's any comments? Maybe look at,
Maybe my first comment is I will be traveling from that period on
okay, so you'll be gone on this date, June
On the 17th?
7th,
the 7th. Correct.
June 7th.
June 7th, okay.
Yeah, okay. Good to know. For both meetings, you're traveling and not accessible virtually.
It's gonna be difficult. I'll be in
Okay.
Europe.
Okay. Will you be? Okay, got it. So that's good to know. So thank you for that update. And I think if council wants to also look at the timing of some of these issues, I think staff has done a good job in this case, but in general, just to make sure council might agree with timing outlines.
Are there other meetings that you will be in Europe for, or is it just this one?
I'll be gone for 12 days. So normally that should only cover one regular meeting and study session.
Tell me
The second.
why I asked. Okay, this looks good. This future agenda looks good to me. Does it look good to you guys? Okay, so nothing there. Thank you, staff, for that. And now we will move on to information only items, budget and strategic plan update with Devin.
Good afternoon.
Oh, there she is. I'm like, wait, where'd she go?
That's great, because now nobody has to turn around to look at her.
Right.
That's awesome.
Great.
Good adjustment, you guys.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me, counselors. Devin Schmidt, Budget and Strategic Plan Officer. And I'm just going to take you through a brief budget and strategic plan update. As council recalls, we're trying to keep this information in the forefront. So throughout the year, and then once by the time we get to the 2023 budget kickoff, which is just around the corner, hopefully it's not too many surprises or anything of that nature. So this ties to financial excellence and high-performing government in the strategic alignment. And I did want to highlight, we are having 2 additions to the public process. So we will be hosting a budget town hall. We'll be doing 2 of those, one June 15th and one July 27th, from 5:30 to 6:30 in council chambers. We're also going to do a farmer's market booth. And
Nice.
so, yeah, just looking
That's
to
a
get
really good
additional
idea.
public input. So we're
Have you ever
excited.
done a farmer's market booth
I haven't.
for the budget?
No, we have not. So brand new.
You did for a multimodal thing one time. It was great.
You did? And people
Yeah.
commented?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so we're looking to do a couple innovative things. We're gonna have the strategic plan laid out and have folks be able to place some dollars out to say where would they like to see their city funding going towards. And so we're gonna try and have it be engaging and get a lot of public comment and feedback on the budget and that process. So
It's really great to go to where they are. When you have the town halls, do you usually get a lot of attendance?
this will actually be our first town hall.
Oh, okay.
We have done public presentations, of course, but this will be our first town hall where we're inviting the public to come ask questions. We'll do some educational pieces around, where the sales tax and those funding comes from. And then we'll probably do something similar again, where folks have the opportunity to kind of place dollars on different strategic plan buckets, so that we're able to see where there's some alignment there. So
That's great.
yeah, we're looking forward to it. So those are 2 additions to the process this year. And so that'll be fun and exciting for our group. The second part, I did want to just let council know, we are kicking off budget guidance and kickoff for budget on May 20th. So that's Friday. So we'll be working with the departments, taking them through the changes in OpenGov, the changes with budgeting by strategic plan initiatives. So we're starting early. Absolutely. We're also doing a public survey, and that'll close the end of July, and we'll be happy to present that information back to council. And then a lot of the calendar process is similar, where we'll bring the CIP projects to the study sessions in August. Those will have gone through the advisory board process first. And so we'll have that for review, and then we will be doing a budgeted brief this year as well. What that does is it gives kind of a snapshot of the budget, so that it's easy for any citizen council to just kind of see very high level what's included, and then with some detailed information in there. So just wanted to put the calendar in front of you all again, because it's been a while since we've shared that, and we're kicking off Friday, so we're excited. The next part is we have been working on a project, and we'll talk more about this at the regular council meeting, but we did want to let you know that we do have some sales tax forecast analysis. And so I wanted to provide a little bit of the data in the background about how we've developed this, and how we work with the college to do so, and then kind of what some of the assumptions are in the forecast. So we're using a statistical regression forecast that was presented to us in SaltFab back in the COVID times of 2020, early on. We ran into some challenges with the model though, because it's based on a normal year. It's not picking up the high inflation rates. So there's some challenges to the model. So what we did, and this was a recommendation that we got from the college, was to pull out the inflation and just have the consumer price index and the populations for San Juan County and La Plata County. So statistically speaking, those two variables are 95%, meaning that they're very close to having that proper variation for sales tax. And the unemployment rate, and those are at that 99% level. So with that, our assumptions that we baked into the 2022 estimate and the 2023 estimated budgeted forecast is that we're having a 1% margin of error. So it could swing 1% less or 1% more in that margin of error. This is based on, you will see in the next slide when I show you those sales tax forecasts, that we're expecting 2022 to actually come in pretty flat to what we actually received in 2021. And then in 2022 dip slightly compared to that 2022 budget. And that has to do with the potential recessionary conversation that they're talking about in the middle of next year. If that happens, you typically see that consumer price index fall. And historically, our sales tax has kind of followed that trend line as well, with less discretionary spending, and with that sort of recessionary environment, you see that sales tax dip a little bit. So, and I'll talk more about this at the regular meeting, but I did want to give council a preview. This is what we'll be basing all of the general fund, the 15, the 2019, the 2005, both quarter cents sales tax for any of those projects. So we have shared this with the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, or for staff to bring to them, so that when they're looking at their projects, they know this is what we're thinking for revenue. So if you'll see up there, we're projecting fiscal year 2022 to end at 19.5 million, which is pretty flat to what we came in with 2021. You can see the variance to budget there is about 4% across the board. And so when we're looking at revenues, we're trying to be within that 5% mark. And then you'll see in 2023, it is about 1.3% over what we saw in against the 2022 budget. So this is kind of our forward looking. We'll continue to refine, adjust these as we see what's happening, but there's so many variables with the war in Ukraine, what's happening with inflation. What we heard from SaltFab when we explained to them about this project was the recommendation was to go somewhat conservative moving forward, so that if we do hit a bigger recession than what's anticipated, we're able to still balance the budget, we're still able to move forward. And we do have a very, very healthy fund balance right now with the general fund. So we do have that as well. So I'll take a second and pause and see if there's any questions on that sales tax part of it from council. We're certainly happy to share some of our data if there's interest, but
Yeah, maybe just thank you for the update. Maybe a question, why do you do the budget for 23 against the budget for 22 and not the estimate? Because the budget for 22 was established in 21.
so we were just trying to show it compared to budget. A lot of times when we're reflecting this information back to council, since 2022 is an estimate and the budget's what's been adopted, we're trying to show how it compares to where we're currently living in. And so that was kind of the thought process there. If you wanted to see it against 22, we can certainly, against our estimate, we could certainly provide that.
I think that would be a good column to add.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're not, it doesn't really matter anymore what the 2022 budget is. It matters what the 2022 actuals are, so.
Sure. Like I said, this is our preliminary. We're gonna build our CIP projects off of this. We're gonna balance the general fund off of this, and of course, the other charges and services, but these numbers could change when we get closer in August to official, proposed budget. So just wanted to say, this is our forecast. This is what we're thinking today, but could always change. So any other questions on that? Okay. Did want to update council. We have some upcoming airport projects potentially. So the first one on there is there's 2 new small projects that are currently out to bid with the runway closure in September. It seemed opportunistic, that's a hard one, to staff to go ahead and look at doing those 2 parking lots while they don't have to worry about the cars being parked there. So they're out to bid. If it comes in that those 2 projects are feasible, we would come back to council for an appropriation on those 2. Fuel costs, and you'll see that in the next slide too. They have certainly increased significantly, so we may be looking at a mid-year for that with airport. And then the terminal expansion, there's an opportunity with a grant, and so this would probably come to council in Q4. So
That project is still for sure happening in those dates in September.
that's my understanding. Yeah, I know Tony's online, and I think he can speak to that, but I believe it's.
And to confirm, I think it's September 7 to 16 or something.
It's in that range. I don't have the exact dates, but it's those
Okay.
first couple weeks of September.
And Tony's right there if he wants to confirm.
Yeah, if you can hear me, that those dates are indeed still fixed, and it's September 7 through 16, 10-day period starting on the 7th, a few days after Labor Day.
Yeah, thank you, Tony.
So Jackson Hole just did the same thing and a lot of people didn't listen.
Really?
Yes. So,
It showed up.
and,
Or-
or couldn't get, or made reservations to stay places and couldn't get there to stay there, both directions. So I hope people hear us. I hope, we get the word out there.
It's painful reality when you don't have your airport that you rely on all of a sudden. So it's interesting.
Absolutely. And so I did want to bring a couple potential mid-year adjustments. So with the 2 potential elections, there could be the special election and then the lodger's tax uses election. So those would be at around $58K each. Records request software. So the clerk's office has been looking at some better efficiencies with those record requests. They're at 200 so far this year. And so if they're able to find some efficiencies there, that would be a project that would come. There's roofing needs at River City Hall and the police building. As I mentioned, the high prices for fuel could result in an adjustment for airport. I apologize, transit's not on there as well, but they're seeing that too. We would bring back the reduction for CIP for any of those projects that aren't coming forward this year, with the expectation that they would be in the 23 budget potentially. So and then security cameras for as a result of the internal controls and examination. And then ARPA fund allocation for La Costa Road. So what this would be a request for 500 to 600,000 using those ARPA funds. As previously identified from council that there was an appetite to utilize the ARPA funds for La Costa Road. What that would be is about 150,000 for water sewer, and then the remainder would be for traffic analysis and road and intersections designs for La Costa Road. And I know Scott's here if there's any further questions on that one. But that would be one that would, could come sooner than a mid-year, depending on the project. Is there any other questions on that? Because I could pause for a second.
There probably will be doing when you bring
Yeah.
it forward.
Right. I guess my question, it would be, I'd be interested in getting a layout of all of the ARPA funds, what's been spent so far and on what. And what we have left over and what it's, what we're saving it for, or what we've, yeah, identified as I was actually, yeah, it would just be nice to have an update so far.
We can partner with finance on that, absolutely. And then the final one is the recreation center improvement project. This is another one where there is some major synergies to, instead of doing the roof project, they need to resurface the pool. And so if they were going to do the, because they were doing the aquatics feature project this year anyway. So there was some better synergies there. It shouldn't necessarily affect the budget, but it will affect what that recreation centers project is being utilized for. So that would be one that we would bring to council's attention to, just for the good synergies in that project. And then wrong computer. And then last but not least, so the couple other items, we've talked about this before, is with labor, asphalt, facility maintenance, and material costs. We could see more bid proposals coming in higher than budgeted for 22. With the inflation on materials and goods and services in the operating budget, we could see that. In a lot of areas we have contracts, so that would probably more likely towards the 23 budget. And then again, as I've already talked about, if we hit that recessionary kind of environment in the middle of next year, like some of the economists are forecasting, that could kind of see that dip in sales tax revenues potentially, just with that CPI coming down and folks being in a different environment. We are trying to figure out the effects of if how many remote workers have moved to the area and how that's affecting the sales tax, because I think it's, you know, it could be significant based on what we saw in the forecast. So there's a lot of different areas that we're trying to navigate and look at as we're building up these assumptions. So
you mean significant in a positive way or significant?
sure, yeah, in a positive way. Yep, absolutely. Since we found that the population of La Plata County and San Juan County are significant to our sales tax, if we do have as much remote workers as we think, based on what we're hearing from the real estate community, we could certainly see that having a positive impact. Absolutely. So yeah, all those considerations are what we're looking at. So, and that's all I have for you today. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Devin.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update.
Yeah, absolutely.
Succinct to the point. It's great. Thank you.
And hopefully, as you see these quarter or these updates that we place every month, kind of just continue to place that in front of the city council of the things that we're looking at, things that you might be seeing, and then even other things that we're consistently monitoring. Also, I just want to give a big thank you to Devin and her team in getting the public engagement started. So those 2 town halls specifically here are going to be great educational opportunities, as well as the farmers market booth. So I think if you look at our strategic plan and some of the priorities that I've outlined with the council and getting better financial information and data, partnering with Fort Lewis College and being able to provide even more in-depth data, and then even looking at that engagement component with the budget side, you can see that, and finance as well, that we are really beginning to reach out and continue to evolve and get better as we continue to move through.
Excellent. It's really helpful that you're keeping us informed on some of these issues as they arrive, because then we do hear about them and we've been informed. And so we're really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Devin.
Okay, we're moving on to the downtown next steps project update with Savannah.
Come on down.
Hold on, I feel like a winner.
You are. You are.
Good afternoon, council. Savannah Lytle, Community Development, and I have with me here Ellie Schaefer. She's with MIG, which, while it's a national firm, we have that expertise. They do have an office here, so she is a local Durango resident. So that was a huge asset to this project. So she'll be presenting with me as well. Do you have the power?
You may want to go to the share screen on Zoom. Savannah so that everybody can see.
Oh, okay.
So right, yeah, that one, and then click the share screen up there. Click on your presentation. Oh, perfect. You got it.
Is that?
Awesome.
okay? Everybody see
Perfect. Thank you,
that?
Savannah. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. So this is downtown's next step, update. Just quickly, because I know we don't have that much time, but go through the process engagement recap. Go over some of the conceptual streetscape designs that are currently up online, and that will also be presenting at a public community open house on Thursday. Go over those with you, get any feedback on that, and then go over the continuing public engagement process as well as steps. So very quickly, going way back where this came from, this is really feeding off a bunch of policy guides that we have adopted in the past 15 years. And this goes all the way from our comprehensive plan as well as downtown Durango vision and strategic plan that was adopted in 2006 that really started to initiate this. A lot of these goals and objectives were to create and enhance these public experiences that we have downtown, and how can we enhance that, as well as the comprehensive plan speaks to economic development and tourism goals, objectives, and policies being continued public involvement in the main avenue central business district area to be enhanced for residents and as well as visitors. So this is something that we are now implementing these efforts from the past 15 years. And really the catalyst started to be the Bump Outs for Businesses program that was implemented in 2020 as an emergency program to address the pandemic and quarantine when we had restricted seating in businesses. And what we found is that this created vibrancy and energy downtown that met these goals and objectives from the policy guides, and how do we continue to keep these going on a more permanent and sustainable level? How do we keep this going? So that was the catalyst for this. We saw this come forward. City Council approved funding for this project, and this is just the first step that we're doing right now. This is the conceptual design of what we want to see this look like, and then I'll explain more of the future steps that will go forward with construction documents and the traffic studies. But at this point, really, what do we want to see? What do we have our vision? How can we move forward and meet those goals and objectives of creating that vibrancy and maintaining that vibrancy that we do have downtown, and moving it forward? So the Bump Outs for Businesses program, we have currently in place. It is a temporary program. It was always intended to be temporary at this point, but we do see it as something that we would want to continue until we are able to do the construction and meet the conceptual design. From there, I'll turn it over to Ellie to go over the project a little bit more.
Nice to meet you all. Thanks for having me today, council members. So just a quick reminder, I think we're all familiar probably at this point, but the project area, we're looking from 5th to 14th on downtown Main. It's a streetscape project, we call it. It's looking from building face to building face, everything in the public right of way along the 9-block corridor. So just a quick recap of schedule. I know Savannah's done a great job of keeping you guys in the loop up to date, but we have been working on this since December. We've had community and stakeholder engagement throughout the process, including a dedicated stakeholder group. We started with analysis and background document review. Then we got to visioning and goals for the effort, which we then used to create 4 conceptual design alternatives, which we vetted with the community. And that's led us to where we are today with the one preferred draft design concept. So before I walk you through the design, I want to share a little bit about what we've heard to date and the engagement we've had. So we have had 6 meetings with the stakeholder group, and we also had a dedicated staff group to get that professional expertise as well. We did combine those meetings at the end. We found some synergy in having those groups hear from each other as well. We had 2 online community questionnaires. The first was about vision and values for downtown Main. Second one was about the 4 concept alternatives. We had over 2,200 total responses between the 2 questionnaires. So we thought that performed outstandingly. And then we had 2 community open houses so far, 1 virtual and 1 in person. And then there's been 19 smaller meetings led by the bid, Tim Ellsworth and Savannah, and city-led and bid-led meetings. And again, I'll give a little more information about the upcoming ongoing public review and upcoming open house. But we do have that coming up on Thursday as well to review the draft design. So from what we've heard so far, key themes overall have really been about increasing bike and pedestrian safety and really reconsidering, what's kind of currently a vehicular oriented street to really elevate bikes and pedestrians in the public realm. We've also heard about expanding the sidewalks, so wide, clear sidewalks, reducing conflicts on the sidewalk, both between groups of people as well as traffic in and out of the bump outs, and then amenities that take up that sidewalk space as well. So just a lot going on in that existing 12 feet. Then we've been, another key theme has been expanding and improving just space in general for people in the public realm. So that's both in the public and private format. So whether it's a patio space or a public plaza type of space. And then pretty much everything else on this slide is really kind of what we consider given or key consideration during the process of things that we knew we'd be factoring in no matter what the design ends up looking like. So that includes supporting the businesses, providing some vehicle parking, delivery, snow removal, emergency access, and existing trees. So based on all the feedback we heard in our first round of engagement, we generated this vision statement. I won't read it to you, but you can see the words in bold that kind of jump out some of those key themes. So the vision is really what we're aiming to achieve during this process. We've also generated 5 goal statements. Those were generated early on as well. So those help us measure the design alternatives once we had those up and live with the community. So we actually ranked with a 1 to 5 star rating all of the design alternatives based on a bunch of different metrics that are measurable within each of these goals. And we communicated that to the community and stakeholders when we had that survey out. So we've got all this info online if you want to take a closer look, but just a little bit of background there. All right, so with that, we can get into walking through the draft design. There's a lot in there, so I'll try and walk you through all of it and touch on all the key highlights, but feel free to ask questions and we can also take questions at the end, whatever works. So to start, this is sort of our base section that we're using. It's been customized on every block, but we're just calling it the standard improvements. And I'm going to walk through the corridor from north to south. I'm starting up at between 14th and 13th. So on this stretch of the road, we've got the standard section. So we're looking at expanding 12-foot sidewalks up to 17-foot sidewalks, adding 5 feet on either side, adding amenity zone and curb bulb outs, sorry, I always get those wrong, bulb outs into the parking zone. So providing some space for amenities on either side of the road. And then we are shrinking the 12-foot lanes down to 10 feet, which is really an industry standard for a downtown setting like this.
Ellie, it's Ellie, right?
Yeah.
Is the car in the middle in a turning lane?
Yes, it's turning / deliveries in the middle lane.
Okay. And the seating area on the right is that's like those like bistro tables? Or
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So it's the exact bistro regulations will be determined in that program itself, but we're looking at conceptually about 9 feet of allowance for a bistro zone with a permit.
And then that left-hand or that turn lane, delivery lane, it will be all the way down Main.
Yes,
That's something that was super important to a bunch of the businesses and restaurants.
yeah.
I talked
So
about, was
the
having that
reason,
turning lane.
yeah, so we heard a ton of feedback about that center lane being so important both for turns and deliveries. So that's ultimately why we went with this base section, which was, I think, a version of concept 1 from our design alternatives. But yeah, we also added it on our flex blocks, which I'll get to in a few minutes, where we hadn't previously contemplated it based on that community feedback.
In this case, you said that the sidewalks are going from 12 feet to 17 feet?
Correct.
Okay, so added.
Yes. Yeah, so we, continued throughout the process to hear a priority for the space above the curb, as how I call it, so that public space, pedestrian space. So this is really adding those 5 feet and focusing there, as well as even getting up to 25 feet when you do have the 8-foot. That's not a parking space and it's a curb pulled out. And then bike facilities. So we're envisioning it to be the same condition that's out there today, but an enhanced version of it. So through the design of lots of different traffic calming elements throughout the corridor, it encourages traffic to go slower, and it's a safer condition really for all modes as a result. So we did consider earlier configurations of different bike facilities, but this is where we landed based on feedback.
So sorry for interrupting, but I think one of the key goals was also the bike safety, but the situation will be narrower and the bikes will be on the road. So it's not really.
So we actually find that narrower lanes are safer for bikes. It causes the cars to go slower, and it's more desirable for them to be stacked bike car, like front to back, I guess, if you will, rather than if you have a wider lane, sometimes the bike tries to squeeze next to the car. And in this case, they'd be between on-street parking, door zone, and the car itself. So you've got fast cars and sort of people trying to fit side by side, where really it's safer to have slow cars and people stacked front.
And you're envisioning a 15-mile-an-hour or less speed limit also with that concept?
There will be a study done for that, and so we'll determine what the appropriate speed is, but most likely we'll land somewhere around there.
Well, what I liked about not having the bike lanes is that so for me, what I'm kind of seeing is that this is a way to get into downtown and do downtown things. And if I want to go through downtown, then I'll go on the River Trail, or I'll go on East 2nd Avenue, or I'll go on Camino. And same way for traffic. If I want to get through town, I'm going to go somewhere else. If I want to get to town and do something in town, then this is the path I would take.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's what we've heard from the community throughout too. They see downtown Maine as like a destination in itself and not just a thoroughfare or a highway for any mode. Right. So then I've got some plan view graphics. I'll just point out a few unique things on each block. So here we're looking at slowing traffic as it enters downtown Maine from the north on the right side of the page by having just one lane entering from North Main instead of two. And that's based on some preliminary conversations with CDOT. So we'll see what happens with that intersection in the future, but that's an opportunity there. That intersection also proves an opportunity for a gateway, more of a arrival experience as you get to downtown from North Main or North Durango. And then lastly, there's some private parking that's currently head in. You can see on here, we're looking at it being angled just to pull it out, reduce that conflict when people are backing out, but also allow for some plaza space or an enhanced public realm on the building side of that parking. But again, part of that is private property. So we're just envisioning what that could be at this point.
So question on the merging to one lane coming down from the 14th to 13th, you're on, the highway basically, and there's two lanes. So you're going to be will you have cars being merging basically in the intersection?
No, I think it would be one through lane. If you're heading southbound across the intersection, one right turn dedicated, one left turn dedicated.
Okay, so they would change that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then Buckley Park. So first Buckley, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, can I ask, can you explain that a little better? So if I drive on Camino Del Rio to the right, I'm gonna have to separate between either going straight on the left lane or be in the right lane and turn right.
So my understanding, and again, this is CDOT, so we haven't looked at this as much, but my understanding is that two of the lanes will be dedicated right, because we know how that blocks up right there, and then the one will be straight or left.
Okay.
So that's
I
my
see.
understanding is two will go right, so it keeps that flow going, that can back up right there, and then the one will
only
remain
left
the
lane will
straight.
be LA to go.
Right.
So on which road are you now? Are you on Camino Del Rio going south or on 14th?
I am on Camino Del Rio and I'm going south.
By
Currently,
Porter
there are 3 lanes there. One of them is a right only, so that one's just a continuous flow. The middle one is right or straight, and then the one on the left is straight or left. So they're gonna take that one that goes straight or right and just make it right only, so then it's not stacking up, because we all know how it happens. The person in the very front is gonna go straight and back everybody up, so just make that more of a continuous flow.
Okay. And no changes on the other direction from the left of Camino or 14th Street?
Not that I'm aware of at this point. No, I haven't heard that from CDOT.
It's interesting. It's a good way to slow traffic.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Buckley Park, of course, we know it's unique because they're, the park itself, as well as there's a lot of special events that happen there. One thing we heard from the community was also about maintaining ADA parking, accessible parking there, and trying to improve ADA accessibility as well. So we've done a special, kind of called it like the walk through the park experience, but really trying to carry the park out to the street edge. Like, so looking at maybe heavy landscaping, lots of amenities, but at the same time carving out some accessible spaces on that block as well. 12th, I'll point out as well, is a key gateway location for bikes coming from the future underpass, as well as from the east side of Maine. We've conceptually put a wide crossing on the north side of 12th, knowing that there's a lot of pedestrian traffic there when there is an event in the park. And lastly, looking at opportunities for additional play space, either within the public realm or maybe just in the park in the future, depending on what opportunities arise.
So there's a significant amount of parking that's missing, that's changed on this. So when people come to Buckley Park, are we going to be talking about where we envision them parking?
Sure. So coming out of this effort, there is going to be a downtown-wide comprehensive parking management study. So that'll look at parking within proximity of the park as a whole. There will be no change from this effort to the diagonal spaces along the north and south end of the park. But this does look at prioritizing that public space within the streetscape over parking for the most part on the east side of the block.
So depending on the parking study, would there be potential for needed changes to the design? Because we have taken away opportunity to park.
Yeah, again, this is conceptual, so we know that there may be changes based on traffic study that will be done, or perhaps even utilities once we get in the ground with engineering and there's some utilities. So again, this is just the conceptual, and we wanted to have this before we did the parking study so that the consultants could look at this and see where we wanted to go and what our concept was and be able to work with that and move forward. So
Will the trolley be stopping in the lane?
Yeah, so in really throughout the corridor, I'm pretty sure everywhere we are proposing inline trolley stops. So that does give some more priority to the trolley itself. It doesn't necessarily slow down traffic anymore, because if you think about it, the trolley has to pull out of traffic, slow cars down, pull back in, slow cars down. So it's a trade-off in that regard as well. But by doing that, it also gives us that extra space above the curb by not having the pull-off zone.
Is there, when we spoke about cycling, so I'm very concerned about cycling, because practically the cyclists will stay on the right side of the lane and cars will pass the cyclists, especially if they're still in the middle lane. And then adding the transit buses that stop in the middle of the road, we create another level of risk to safety of cyclists. I don't have the answer, but I want to voice that concern.
So I ride my bike on this road all the time. And now that the speed limit's down to 15 and now that it's only one lane going each direction, I feel very comfortable riding my bike in the middle of the lane because traffic is supposed to be going 15 miles an hour and I'm probably going 12 to 15 anyway. And I haven't experienced an issue with that at all.
I do it with my kids regularly. And I hear from the community as well. Based on this design, there is no other alternative, but it is definitely a concern.
I think that this is what we have now, and like this is better than what we used to have when it was the 2 lanes with the bike lane, like, because then you were right next to the cars opening up their doors and the cars on the other, like that was crazy. Like, but this has been better than one, I think personally, with my kids.
So 12th to 11th, again, we're back to a version of the standard improvement section. I guess I'll just touch on a few things with parking here now too. In general, the concept is to prioritize on-street parking for short-term ADA and deliveries. So exactly how that plays out is to be determined, but that's
Short-term meaning 30 minutes and under.
yeah, something like that, somewhere in that range. So
And that would be on all the blocks.
yeah,
here.
in theory, yeah. Yeah, so allowing people to quickly go pick something up or drop something off, prioritizing those that need more close accessible parking, that sort of thing. And then The overall parking count in this concept, we're looking at transforming about 55 parking spaces into the expanded curb zone. So that's 55 of, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, 170 or something.
170.
Yeah.
Is that number based on current use of the bump outs, or is that prior to the bump outs?
So the bump outs is about 48 spaces.
Currently,
That we're
In
using.
2021, it was 48 that were removed for bump outs.
On
And
Main.
So on Main Avenue. And so what is proposed here would be the 55.
And so the bump outs will be converted to bistros is basically
Right,
the
but we want-
concept.
Yeah.
So, and because I had someone today not run me down, but come over to talk to me. And one of their concerns was with the bump outs where they are now, like the servers are always going across and it creates traffic jams. So to put the bistro area up against the restaurants or up against the businesses, I think it's a really good improvement. And not having the bump outs out in the road like that. And I also think it achieves that, like, let's be able to look at our historic buildings. And right now, one of the comments, which I told you in my email, is downtown to some people looks like a flea market. And I think that would really help change that perspective too.
so just so I understood that correct, the 55 spots is compared to pre-bump outs altogether.
Correct.
Yeah, that 174, I think it is. That's total without bump outs.
That's how many parking spaces we had
Yes,
from 5th to 14th.
out there today, if you took out all the bump outs.
And so then what was removed from that was 41, right?
Yeah.
For the bump outs, and then it'll be, 48, and then it'll be 55 for
Yeah.
this
So an
design.
additional 7 spaces.
An additional 7 beyond what's lost in exchange for bump outs,
Okay.
yeah. And again, that'll be fine tuned based on the results of the parking study. The bulb outs themselves can grow and shrink. We've really been trying to find the balance between providing parking and providing public space.
And what a great also advantage for the bistro tables and being that much farther removed from the cars. than today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so much more of a pleasant experience.
Yeah, quieter, better air quality.
Now with the bulb outs, if someone would cycle, let's say on 11th Street towards Main Street, on 11th Street, they would be also, I guess, in the middle of the road. Or
Yes,
Of the lane.
in the middle of the lane.
because there's no margin anymore in the road, the cars are right against the bulb.
It
Yeah.
seems like a car is like a bike now, like your bike is like, it has to be, right? Like you're stacking up with cars. So hopefully there will be respect.
And that's one of the goals of the bulb outs, is to make bikes as well as pedestrians more visible to cars. And so that's one of the key goals, so that would make them more visible.
Yeah, so when a pedestrian is waiting in a bulb out to cross the street, they're more visible because they're farther out in the street, but they're in a protected zone. The crosswalk itself is also shrunk 16 feet. So the opportunity for conflict between pedestrians and cars is less because they're crossing.
What might help with this conversation is some examples, case studies of communities that have done this and how it's worked, both in Europe and, I don't know, Chicago and the United States, all these places. Because I think one of the challenges is some people are looking at this like, this is a design that just kind of came out of their mind, and it isn't based in good example or best practices or previous experiences of communities. And I think that might be really powerful to be able to put that out there for the counselors and also for the community members.
And I think we have a really close example of how downtown was changed nearby in a car community that people don't like. If that makes sense.
What's community?
Grand Junction. I've gotten numerous emails and they're like, we don't want our downtown to turn into there's no businesses there anymore. And, and so I think that is my big thing too, is it's like, give us some examples of where this is successful and how it worked. And, it is helpful that it's only 44 or 48 to 51, 55. So it's not even yet.
It would be interesting too, as we do the parking study and the traffic study, or at some point in this, along the same line of looking at what other communities have done. I've received some feedback from residents that are suggesting we do our own little like beta test here, as close as we can to the reality of what it might be like.
Yeah.
So that we can see what it's going to be like. If, I don't know how you would section it off such that you had to follow the rules of the road like you have outlined here, but it would sure be an interesting experience also as far as seeing how it works to have deliveries take place in the alley or delivery, I don't know, it would just be an interesting test.
So
if we could do
I
a
will
beta
point you
test.
towards two interim deliverables that we put together. One is our best practices memo, which does talk about curb bulb outs at the corner as well as mid-block, I believe, but we can provide more examples of towns and cities that do that. I will say it's very much a best practice. It's a really great use of an underutilized space. Second, what was the second
The
one?
implementation
The
memo
implementation
I
memo.
sent earlier this morning, but it has some examples of how you can do those interim steps. One way that communities have done it is paint it out, so they have
Yeah.
the striping and then maybe some bollards up around it, so people start to get used to that and see the turning movement, see how the bikes go, and that's just something you might have up for a year or two until you're ready to do the full construction for that. So there are a couple ways to do it, as you said, to test it out, do the beta test for it.
Yeah.
And on the bulb outs, just to be clear, I'm not seeing chairs or things, it's just clear, open, unobstructed space.
So we do see those as a good opportunity for certain amenities. It depends like how much space is actually
Uh-huh.
available based on the size of the bulb out. We don't have that much detail at this level of concept, but it's certainly a good place, especially for bike parking, I'll point out, to get that out of the sidewalk space.
And then on the concrete along the straightaway, is that just, I can't really tell, maybe they're trees, but that's just clear concrete, almost a bulb out along the road too, correct?
Yes, we haven't specified materials yet, but with an investment like this, you'd probably put in some kind of enhanced stamped or colored concrete, maybe brick, what have you. We have thought about the center lane being an opportunity for a permeable concrete because there is snow storage that happens there, and that can help the snow melt and filter through the ground rather than create more runoff. So there's a good opportunity with that, and that can also be with the non-street parking as well if snow is being stored there.
I like that this looks like it's adding more greenery to our downtown, which always cools things down. And I think that's really a great idea.
Yeah, that's absolutely a benefit, I think, of that extra space in the public realm, more landscaping, as well as things like public art, opportunities for that, seating, bike parking, that all types of amenities, trees in particular, for sure. So the flexible blocks, these are from 11th to 9th in the draft concept design. We've heard a lot of feedback desiring a pedestrian mall or a street close to cars through this effort. We've also heard a lot of feedback for people seeking no change at all. And I guess I'll add, in the majority of the feedback we've heard is wanting some degree of that change somewhere in the middle. So really, we don't think a pedestrian mall or no change are going to achieve the city's and the community's goals for downtown Maine. So we're really trying to, again, balance different perspectives and reach that balance through this design. So the flexible blocks are really an opportunity for, more resilience moving forward. Like, let's hope we don't hit another pandemic, but if we do, this type of streetscape is designed to change over time. It's also designed to be easily closable for a special event or for a Saturday in the summer, or whatever the city and community decided to do with that space. But we heard overall a lot of support in our second community survey for this design concept. This was that special concept number 4. We heard support for it pretty much on almost every block of downtown Maine. So we landed on 9th to 11th for a few reasons. One is that 10th is a T intersection on the west side, so that's easily closable as well for a smaller event there. Those blocks have been consistently programmed a lot with the bump out, so we know that there's the activity in the public realm to support a design investment like that. We also think rather than putting it farther south on the corridor, it's an opportunity to draw people up from the train station and from some of those hotels further up north on Main.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah, so it really gives you that unique, memorable experience that people are seeking to have in downtown Maine. Of course, the exact paving and design will be, super responsive to the historic buildings it's adjacent to. That's always going to be a consideration on this corridor. Some of the infrastructure I'll point out that's flexible is that it is a curbless design, so no curb and gutter. Instead, it drains. It's a reverse crown, so it drains towards the center of the roadway. So some extra, considerations with the engineering and design of that. But also with that flex curb, you can park a food truck on the corner, or you can move furniture around and just really have lots of different uses in that space.
So the curb and the street are the same.
Yeah,
Plain.
one level surface, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Only on the flexible block, on the
Correct.
flexible blocks?
Flexible blocks.
Right. okay.
Yeah, so there's some safety considerations with that. Of course, we put a tactile warning strip with those, half domes as an alert for people that are visually impaired. There's also safety bollards that would go up along the edge, but those are removable or retractable for special events. So just having all that sort of in place, as well as electricity is another piece for special events, making sure it's set up to support those.
So I don't want you to go back, but a couple of pictures back, and I forgot to ask, there were icons that had kind of like an arch in them, and they're the purple with the
Yes.
white arch. What are those?
Those are gateway opportunities.
Ah,
Yeah, so we've
okay.
identified a few intersections.
Oh, there's
that
one
are
right there,
key
yeah.
gateways.
Where-
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Those are, what are they?
Gateway opportunities. So we put some kind of signage like, branded to downtown Durango, really welcoming people to downtown so they know they've arrived. And that can come in different forms, informational signage, art, what have you, but that would take, some further design out of this effort.
Okay, just a quick process question for council. It looks like we have about 4 more minutes, and I'm concerned that we might want to have a longer conversation. So wondering if we want to extend this by, extend our break another 15 minutes. Does that sound good? Try for 3:45?
Yep.
That's okay with staff?
Or skip the break.
Huh?
Or skip the
Or
break.
skip the break, either way. Okay,
I'm fine with skipping the break or pushing it. It doesn't matter to me.
I'm fine with skipping the break.
I think
too.
this is a really important conversation.
I think so too. Okay, let's keep going then. And then we'll revisit at 3:45.
Sure.
I
Okay.
think you're fine, but Marty can be flexible in his presentation as well, too, if you know, time is tight. We can modify.
That would be great.
Okay.
Thank you, Marty.
So we have a lot of questions. It is important.
Yeah.
I had one question too while I'm thinking about it, speaking of questions.
Yeah.
It seems as I look at this that, and I understand the whole bistro seating for the restaurants now all along the entire quarter for the entire, all the blocks. Will some of the restaurants then be seeing a reduction in their outdoor seating capacity?
From the bump out?
Yes.
Yeah,
I was thinking-
potentially.
I was thinking that they might.
Yeah, 'cause some of the bump outs I think out there today span a couple of business
Yeah, they've
storefronts.
got like
and
2 tables.
Yeah,
with
so
each.
the exact requirements of the bistro zone use are still to be determined, but in theory, if someone's neighbor isn't using their bistro space, there's potential for like an agreement to expand in front of.
But that may be. Okay.
Yeah, potentially limited to the width of your store.
Sounds like it. Okay.
That said, there's still flexibility in programming over time. You could allow for some patios to happen in the bulb out and not in the bistro zone. But that's flexibility that isn't limited at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so Ninth at College. So here we have a few blocks that are using that standard improvement again as sort of the base design. So here we're at the mall. One thing we heard a lot was a desire for public plaza space. There's not a lot of that in downtown Main at the moment. There is a small plaza outside the main mall. So we really saw this as an opportunity to kind of expand that across from that small plaza and make it a bit of a node gathering space right there. So with that, there's the opportunity to, with the mid-block bulb out, there's opportunity to create a mid-block crossing if it makes sense in that location, but the opportunity for a mid-block trolley stop and really making the most use of that mid-block bulb out when it happens there.
The mid-block crossing, me personally as one counselor, I find it a bit hard to, or I don't see really the need for mid-block crossing on a block that's pretty short. Where did it come from? Was it something from our community, or is it something that you thought this is a great idea, or why do we even consider it? Might be a good idea, maybe the community likes it.
I think it comes back primarily to pedestrian priority and making it as convenient and safe of a space for pedestrians as possible on downtown Main. So this is the only one that's along the whole corridor. And like I said, it's in this location, given that mid-block bulb out and that plaza. So really making this block something unique based on its existing conditions. I think further analysis will determine if with multimodal analysis will determine if it's necessary. The blocks are about 350 feet long, and mid-block crossings, it doesn't have to be as big as this even, but they are something you see a lot in downtowns with blocks this size. So that's sort of the impetus, though, is the pedestrian safety and priority.
On your surveys or on outreach, was there any feedback? Was there any support, or was there anybody that said, no, let's put a mid-block in there?
I think mixed feedback for sure. I think originally we were envisioning a couple more, and then we reduced it, I think, from 3 down to 1.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was some feedback, people not sure about the need. That said, this is just the concept. So we're thinking if it's appropriate and it makes sense based on later analysis, then it could be a great asset for pedestrians on Main. But
So
yeah,
is this
mixed feedback.
So this as an example. Now, how are we going to go from this initial design with the mid-block crossing on it to determining if a mid-block crossing will be needed or supported or not, or more needed? What is the feedback you're trying to solicit from our community on, for example, mid-block crossing?
So that's a great example. So we were currently, since May 2nd, we have had this whole design up online. It can be found at our website, durango.gov/downtown Main. So people can put comments, and they can even feed off of other people's comments. So somebody can say, I really support this, and someone else can say, no, I don't, because this interferes with whatever. So people can feed off of each other and provide those comments. And then on Thursday from 5 to 7 at Fort Lewis College, the main mall right here, we will have 2 16 by 36 or 16-foot long documents that people can put sticky notes on. So those
So
will
the
be rolled
Innovation
out.
Center.
Yep, at the Innovation Center. And so that's another opportunity. We'll gather the feedback that we received from you today, as well as those public comments. The online questionnaire will be available through the 22nd, so I believe that's Sunday. And we'll take all of those, put in any changes. So if we do hear overwhelmingly that this is in support or not, then we can change that at that point. We'll then create one final draft and present that to you on June 7th for final, and then this will move forward to the construction documents, the traffic study, all of that was adopted as part of the 22 multimodal CIP budget.
What's the camera and the round green icon?
So this is part of the graphic that we have online. So we have some 3D graphics that are associated with this that actually show the buildings in the background. So there's some visualizations from that perspective.
Okay. And what was the round green? What was your other question, Kim?
Yeah, the round green.
The play structure, it said in
Oh,
the
yes, yes.
design, which I had a question about that too. When as that note, I was like, a play structure, like what is?
Yeah, play elements. Yeah, so that's something we've also identified as a desire of the community downtown, is some place for children to occupy. So looking for small, like pocket, not quite a full pocket park, but little opportunities for some of those elements.
And then you have a bus and a car.
So the blue is a truck route, primary truck route. So that's where we would want the further engineering to really consider the turning radii of the curb bulb outs at the corners to accommodate.
The blue circles on the right-hand side on nine.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so 9, since it comes across the river, it's a direct access from Camino. That's potentially primary truck route. The red is a trolley stop, and the orange is actually a parade route. So again, looking at the turning radius, but we've heard from city staff that sometimes they'll stage parades in the TBK Bank parking lot and come up and turn onto Main.
Okay.
So again, just like a note for the future engineering, that's going to be something we're considering.
Nice.
For the mid-block crossing, will it be raised or just level?
It could be either. We haven't gotten to that level of detail. There's considerations with fire trucks going over the bump for sure.
Oh, yeah.
They can do it. It just depends if balancing their efficiency with that. It could be, but it could be flush or.
And you don't know what type, well, and it will be determined what type of flashing light or just pedestrian right away?
To be determined. Yeah, I'm not sure I can say. Yeah.
So on the bulb outs, if a delivery truck, let's say one of the largest ones that goes on Main Street, makes a turn right around the corner, whether it's from the bottom of the picture to the right or from the top of the picture to the right, your software will tell you what radius it needs. And so does this reflect somehow the distance that it's needed? Because I can imagine, but I'm not an expert, that a big truck will go straight across to make the turn without, so he doesn't hit the curb. So he will go right across the central lane as well as maybe the opposing lane to
Yeah.
make his turn with it, so his rear wheels don't.
Yeah, sure. So the radius we're seeing now is pretty tight. I believe it matches the radius that's effectively out there today. I can double check with my engineer who drafted this out. That said, yes, in the next steps traffic analysis, there's a software called Auto Turn, and they use a design vehicle. Maybe it's that maximum semi truck that's making that turn, what have you, but it actually routes and test drives basically. So bulb outs are used all over the country, the state, the western slope, and they accommodate trucks in all instances as needed.
Yeah, no, I understand it's possible, but if you use the same radius on this one as the current one has no bulb outs, so you're.
Right, so that's what I meant by effective
Yeah.
radius. Yeah.
And the streets look so narrow on 9th and 8th, like, so you can have two-way traffic, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's two,
Yeah,
there's a line.
With the bulb outs, like really.
So it's diagonal parking, so it pinches.
No, I mean like, in between the bulb outs.
Yeah, so the bulb out fills the diagonal parking, so they're extra large on those cross streets.
Oh, okay.
They're deeper, I guess, if you will. So it just the travel lane that's pushing through.
I would really like to see one example of an intersection, any example with the bulb outs, and see how big the bulb outs in reality can be to
Yeah.
allow for trucks to turn. Because my first impression is it seems very tight for a
So
big truck to
beta
make.
beta test would be great for that. Really would help,
Mhm.
I think, for all of us to see, I
Yeah.
agree.
Definitely.
If the mid-block crossing wasn't there, would you get more parking spaces back?
If the mid-block crossing, that doesn't necessarily make the difference, it's the bulb out.
Okay, but the bulb out because of the mid-block crossing, because there, would it be there if there was no mid-block?
So the one on the west side is kind of expanding on that little plaza in front of the mall.
Uh-huh.
So it's not actually there for the mid-block crossing. We saw it as an opportunity for a mid-block crossing, given it sort of went the opposite direction, but there's multiple benefits.
Okay, because there's no like restaurants on that side of the main mall, right?
There's restaurants in the mall.
Inside the mall,
In the
yeah,
mall,
but
yeah,
not,
and
there wouldn't be like
Yeah.
bistro.
right. And of course, the mall is, a unique circumstance, but this is a design for many years. Thinking
Yeah,
about
well, yeah,
flexibility
sure.
and what businesses are where over time.
And also businesses change.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I-
I know, I'm just a comment. It's not,
It's a good point though,
Yeah,
because I
'cause-
think you can easily, if let's say you want to add as much fast parking as possible, you could make angle parking the whole way through, have less sidewalk because there is no bistro.
I'm just not sold on a mid-block crossing. I just don't see that.
Yeah.
Like walk half a block.
And just like Savannah said, to reiterate, we're
Yeah.
taking comments now, we're
Yeah,
taking comments.
yeah,
later,
yeah.
And then there'll be
We're gonna
more
do that.
analysis as well.
It might slow traffic even more.
It
Yeah.
does, it is a traffic
So
calming.
it's just
Yeah.
it's another opportunity to slow traffic.
Yep.
Prevent the drag racing.
One other thing I'll mention with the bulb outs on that last question, we partially designed them based on where the existing trees are. So the trees fall up against the existing curb today. Of course, we want to maintain those and keep those as long as they're healthy. We had proposed that new trees be planted along the new curb, but it does allow, by bulbing out by those trees, it creates kind of a special experience on either side of the tree and extra space for the sidewalk when there is an existing tree. So that's part of the design as well. So 8th to 7th and 7th to college, I think are pretty similar. Nothing too unique to point out. There's a gateway opportunity coming off of college onto Main as well. So then lastly, we've got what we've been calling the depot block. So College to 5th down by the train station. So of course, this one's unique. It's currently a one-way road, 2 lanes southbound. On the south end of the block, it's an L-shaped intersection to the east onto 5th. There's also diagonal parking on both sides. So, we really wanted to keep this block as unique and something special. We weren't looking at rerouting the traffic pattern at this time on that block. But here we go. So we did land on having diagonal parking on one side of the block, but changing to parallel on the opposite side. That creates a safer shared bike experience for one in that lane. You don't have people backing out. They can better see a bike in the lane when they're exiting a parking space. It also allowed for extra width to be added, I think 11 feet to be added to the public realm on either side, since diagonal parking is deeper than parallel parking. I think the last thing I'll mention is that we did do some expanded bulb outs on this block as well. One is for queuing for marches and special events from communications with staff. Having that capacity on the sidewalk reduces the need to temporarily close that block when there is set up for an event or a march that's happening. And then across from the train station, we thought there was an opportunity to, of course, maintain the tour bus drop off. That's really important there, but also for maybe some children's play space. And we've been thinking train themed, but that kind of course. I think that's everything.
Yes, so just quickly, once again, as mentioned, the ongoing public review that will go through Sunday online at Durango downtown Maine, and then that open house on Thursday. So we'll gather all this information, do any needed revisions, and then present the final concept to you. This is the conceptual design. We did have it budgeted, and as mentioned at the last meeting, we did expand that budget to allow for additional public engagement that we felt was much needed. Another public meeting, more refinement of our designs for this process. So that's this step. So next step will be the construction drawings. And so we'll put out the request for proposal for those construction drawings, as well as the traffic study and the engineering aspect of it, and determine that construction funding, where it's coming from, in addition to the multimodal CIP budget. Are there grants and opportunities for that? And then construction anticipated to begin 2024.
So I have a question about that. So would the bump out program then stay in place next year as temporary?
That's what we anticipate.
And then in 24, that would go away and it would become a bistro program? Okay.
Or it may be under construction. I mean, how this is phased is so important.
Right.
We talked about this briefly this morning, is the construction side of it, is how is that phased so it has the least impact on businesses? Is it something that's phased out? Is it just a couple blocks, you know, during a couple months? So maybe if there's just a couple blocks that start construction, maybe the rest have that bump out opportunity, or we'll really have to figure out how that's phasing, because we want to make sure that it has the least impact as possible.
Well, and what I've been hearing too is, you know, they may not agree with the proposal or with a vision, but what they most want is certainty. So to know that their block in 2023, the bump outs are still possible, and in 2024 it's going away, so that they can financially plan for that. That's like one of the biggest considerations I've been hearing, that they understand that each individual person may not agree with the whole process, even though most people agree with it. But mostly they want to know what to do so they can financially plan for it.
And I have a question. Since we're doing work anyways, have we thought about, I've been to communities where there's electrical outlets like outside and, you know, the option for different things. Will we be implementing that as we're doing it? Infrastructure improvements, all that stuff.
Yes, I mean, this is really what we want on this, is one-stop shop. We don't want to go through this and then find out we need a water main that needs replaced. We would like to, through engineering, have this all done right now. There have been some recommendations for ADA, American Disabilities Act improvements as well, that we would like to implement during this time. Yeah, so electrical is a huge consideration. We've started working a little bit, a couple emails with La Plata Electrical Association to start working with them, and those type of things. So absolutely.
And then when is the parking study going to be done, anticipated to be done?
I am not sure when it's anticipated to be.
We'll have the consultants.
Okay.
Did you say mid-June?
Mid-June, yes.
For selection of the consultant.
For selection.
Starting.
To start the study. Mid-June.
What is your, oh, sorry, will you finish?
Yeah.
What do you think? So I'm thinking of the parking study, yeah. And no matter what it says, if we anticipate growth in our community, we can already foresee, if we look long-term, that there will be potentially very likely requirements for parking. And so to what degree is that parking study going to give you a clear-cut answer?
Well, that is the hope, is that they do have solutions for it. What opportunities are there? How are we moving forward? What, I mean, what are the options? Is it a permitting system somewhere in some of more of our residential streets? Parking garage, the big elephant, let's just say it. So what are those opportunities? It will provide those solutions. So it's not just doing a study and saying this is what our concerns and issues are, but hopefully we'll come up with those solutions as well. And what's exciting, I mean, we have so many opportunities moving forward. I mean, there's the self-driving cars and there's the EV, cars too. So there's so much in the future. We almost don't know what it will look like, but they will be able to help us with those solutions.
Okay, so if they will make those kind of clear-cut solutions with the anticipation of a certain growth, same as the water study and doubling of so many years, and anticipated vehicular traffic, and then come up with a solution, then I really think that's a great approach to clarify now what we need in the future. On the bump out, since they will be in 2024, hopefully potentially constructed. I think, and I've brought this up several times, a fee structure that is more appropriate for bump outs. I mean, obviously you have to support businesses when COVID was restricting everything. But I think we're coming to the point where we're basically giving businesses, select businesses, additional business space for, I think, what was it, $100 or $400 a year for a bump out. And I think that is not necessarily fair to businesses that don't use outdoor space, that are restricted to indoor, and if they want to expand, they have to lease indoor space at a premium price. So is there already discussion going on, or is there something at a certain point that you will present to council on fee structure for bump outs as they are temporarily for next year, basically, as well as for the long term?
So there isn't a fee for bump outs. There is a fee for bistros. So the bistros are what is on the public sidewalk, typically adjacent, and that has been a program that's been in place for quite a number of years, even prior to the pandemic. So that one is $100 if it doesn't have a liquor license and $400 if it does. The bump outs do not have that because it was something in an emergency, we wanted to get people outside. So it is something we can revisit if we're directed to do so. We can absolutely do that. And we do see for this upcoming Downtown's Next Step, when the bistros will be out there, if somebody chooses to do them, that we do change that fee structure and have a little longer conversation about what that program will look like when that comes forward. For maintenance, and perhaps there's more design guidelines, so it does have more of a uniform look, maybe with the railings or something to that effect. But that at this point, there haven't been the discussions for how the bump outs will proceed.
So I think it would be, as one council, but I think we'll all respond to that. I think it would be beneficial to make it fair for all business owners. I think it would be beneficial for business owners that use outdoor space to have a better anticipation of future expenses, so that they are aware that it's probably not going to be $100 or $400 to have a bistro on city-owned property. It would be beneficial maybe for our whole community to see that the money that they spend for that space gets reinserted into our community, whether it's beautification or flowers or whatever it is, so that everybody benefits, not only from having the possibility to eat at a bistro, but also that the whole downtown experience is nicer. And I personally would think, I'm not sure if we provide that direction now, but I would be in favor of starting that review or study, however you want to call it, sooner than later, because at the same time, that might help certain business owners that are not so in favor of bump outs and outdoor bistro spaces to say, okay, well, it's going to benefit us as well. Maybe we are supportive of it. Is that something that this council supports, as in directing staff to start the evaluation of a fee structure for businesses that want to use outdoor space for their
I mean, I think that it's so far off from right this very second, exactly what it's gonna look like and what we're offering and who's gonna have access to it. And if once these like get finalized and we like have an idea, then of course, I think yes, just like we did with the bistro fees and stuff like that. But like right now to say for staff to look into that, I think is like just jumping a little bit ahead personally.
Yeah, horse before the cart
Yeah.
at this point. Until
Yeah, once we get
until
it, yes, I think that it's important for sure.
We
but-
won't get it till 2024,
Well,
so we're looking at 2020.
So, but by that
No,
time,
but
like,
you
let's
don't
see how
know
much.
that, so you,
I'm just
so,
saying.
Yeah,
but you don't know that, so.
And
I'm sorry. I
Oh,
have one
please.
quick question too. If you're not done.
well, the last, so I think the fee structure, so that was discussed. I wanted to have majority of council does it. It's okay. The other one is parking structure. I understand we are looking at this parking study. You said June, is it going to start? The study or the bids?
No, we've already put out a request for proposal last month, and so we will have a consultant under contract in June.
Okay, and that would probably take several months, if not a year, because I think for the Buckley Park area, I think we're doing a study as well. Is that the same one? Oh, it's the same one? Okay, so we're quite a long ways up. The reason I bring that up is it worthwhile considering the option to evaluate a parking structure, a permanent parking structure, to at least offset the 55 or 48 spaces that might be lost, are lost, or will be lost. Because even that process, if this will take place in 2024, that might a parking structure in 2023. And then you eliminate, or you get more support maybe from our businesses that feel, and I understand it makes more sense to wait until the parking structure stuff, parking study, but we're spending another year on that study and we're moving everything along.
So do you actually think the parking study will take a year?
I am not sure how long it will take, but Sarah.
We're anticipating having parking study completed by December. And that said, we haven't received proposals yet, and it's an estimate, but that's our.
So if I'm not mistaken, the transit center is set up for a parking garage, right? And we know we like that's the way it was designed. It can go there. My thoughts on that is the last parking study we had showed that we have plenty of parking. The last 4 times I've been to downtown Durango, one was this last Friday night. I parked in the transit center parking lot and there was probably, I know, but I could have parked on Main actually, because there was spots, but I parked in the transit center parking lot just to see. And there was probably, I don't even know how many parking spots. I'm going to say 50 just because there seemed like a lot, but there could only be 50s. I don't know idea how many spots are there. There's a lot of empty spots there. My thinking and wondering is as we're getting closer and the parking study gets done and we kind of see like what it is that we need to ease people's minds, because I do agree there's a lot of people coming forward really concerned about the parking. I would like to see maybe how much money we make off of transit parking, and maybe if we can make that a free option, more people would park there. Then even on Main or on, I mean, those, it might alleviate 3rd Ave free parking that people use all the time that block off 3rd Ave. I'm not saying that's what I'm advocating for. We might make so much money that we can't actually do that. But I'm just wondering if that,
Will that be part of the?
will that be
parking
part of
study?
the process? Okay, great. Thank
Okay.
you, Sarah.
All right, I'm gonna just quickly ask a question, and then I think we need to do a quick break, and then we'll get back
I have
on.
one question too to ask. after
Oh,
you.
okay. Mine is about cost. We had a former counselor in the room who's very concerned about cost. And she mentioned that with me, and of course, it's a very great question. This looks fabulous. It looks like a phenomenal, step in the right direction possibly for our community. It also looks like it's gonna cost a lot of money. So you have down here on step 3, next steps, determine construction funding. At what point are we gonna have an idea of how much this costs, this project is gonna cost our community, ballpark,
It'll be once we have the construction documents and we know more how to move forward with that. At that point, then we can put together a proposal to see how much it actually will cost, but we'll need those construction documents to know what this will actually look like, what it is going to entail. If there are any utilities that need to be moved at that time, or any street lights or any of that type of thing, we'll have a
Right.
better understanding of that at that point.
So that's gonna be also after the traffic study and the parking study, so that will probably be, we won't have that information on cost estimates until 2023 middle,
Yes,
maybe,
yes.
probably. Okay, and then we start talking about how we fund it at that.
Correct, whether that's.
I think you make a very good point, though, because this traffic study is probably going to cost, just gonna throw a number, $150,000 maybe, the construction design.
So
If the
that's-
Camino underpass was 350, then I'm thinking we're gonna look higher than that. Is it possible to get some very rough ballpark order of magnitude numbers on this project?
Just
Because it's going to have a big impact on what our community wants to spend money on. And if we start spending the money on all these other steps beforehand, and we're gonna say, well, it's not gonna happen, we would have spent significant.
Yeah, just a thought, so.
Yeah, we can pull like planning level estimates from previous other work we've done in other communities for
It
a
might be helpful.
ballpark, but I will just say, it comes with a big caveat, like there's so much variability in streetscape design. You know,
Okay,
even
sure.
a few extra benches can sway the cost a good amount, I mean. like,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
a
Not to
lot
mention
of
cost of
moving parts.
construction is like double. the
Electrical
price.
outlets.
Yeah.
But I do think we could probably pull some comps from other projects in other cities as a point of reference.
It might be just interesting to include in the discussion as we're having it.
Sure.
You know, this is a big wish list, and we need to also keep it, have an understanding along with all the other priorities that we constantly discuss as a city council. So it'd be helpful at some point relatively soon, sometime. So anyway, just a thought on that. And Kim, sorry.
So one of the things that I would like to see with the parking study concept is kind of like what the library district did, which was taking several different scenarios. Because I'm not certain that we know exactly what's going to happen in the future with parking. I don't believe that the parking need is going to double. I think actually over time, parking need may decline, or the way we park might be totally different. And how we park might be totally different, how we drive might be totally different. So I'd like to see a couple of different scenarios with their best informed estimate of where they think it would go in the next 10, 20, and 30 years. Because what I love about this design is I don't think it limits what we can do. I think if we can look at an ideal kind of situation, I think that we have ability over time to be flexible. And you keep using that word when you're describing it, and I absolutely agree with that. There's a lot of flexibility here to shift from how parking and how driving and how multimodal works. And I'd hate to lose that ability to be flexible.
Okay, we're significantly over, but I think it's okay. I want to thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Very much for your efforts.
Thank you.
It's exciting. And council, I just need to take a couple minute break. Can we reconvene at 4 o'clock?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Sounds perfect.
Okay.
Jose, before you run off, I have
you for joining us. We're going to go ahead and start. I'm sure Jose will come.
Great. Thank you for having me, council. And I am Marty Poole. I'm the Sustainability Program Manager here for the city. And I am,
We're sorry that we have cut your time short.
not a problem at all.
Okay.
It was flexible, about a 10-minute presentation, and then the rest is open time
Okay.
for discussion and feedback on the plan.
So that's okay. Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
Not a problem.
Sorry, okay.
So we will kick off here with some background and context for the sustainability plan. I'm not trying to draw. Okay, so here's some background and context today.
Marty, I'm
Oh,
sorry, but did
it
you
did.
share it on Zoom?
Oh, no, let me do that. That will, yeah.
I know we have people who are interested.
Let
We'll make
me
sure.
pull that up. I think I am cursed. The last time I came and presented, I also got some,
Are you nervous?
technical difficulties.
Seriously,
yeah.
causes a lot of stress, doesn't it? Anxiety prior to meeting.
At least I am more and more familiar with the systems at this point, so I can find my stuff and then I will share on Zoom. Share screen and we'll go to Nope. Okay, here we go. The sustainability plan, background and context. So many of you may be familiar, the 2015 Sustainability Action Plan is the last officially adopted plan for the city of Durango. It had 10 sections, 182 separate actions, and a large variety of internal goals for the city of Durango as a municipality. And in general, it leaned more towards municipal operations and things that specifically the city of Durango would do around sustainability. Also, the context here is predates the 2017 comprehensive plan update, predates, of course, the strategic planning process that we now have as the city. So just some background history there. So in 2019, City Council adopted Durango's first set of greenhouse gas emissions and renewable energy goals. And then that, along with a greenhouse gas emissions inventory, really kicked off this process for also updating the city's sustainability plan. And here is a timeline of that process. And then as you all are very much aware, in December 7th of 2021, just the end of last year, the city updated or adopted more aggressive greenhouse gas emissions and renewable energy goals. And then finalizing the process here for the sustainability plan. So let me go back just one second. There, over the summer and into the fall of 2021 was an extensive public participation and feedback process on the draft as it was at that point. So here at the start of 2022, we have been reviewing and incorporating that feedback, cross-referencing with other municipalities' plans, the lead for cities framework, which I will get into, discussing with the working group that has community stakeholders that have been providing input on this plan, meetings with city staff, and then drafting the final draft plan as it stands before you today. So when we think about sustainability for the city of Durango, there is a lot of, when you just think of sustainability as a concept, there's a lot of integration throughout so many of the plans that we have. We're very, as a community and as a municipality, are very focused and concerned with sustainability. We have one of the 7 areas of the strategic plan is environmental sustainability and resilience. Sustainability is throughout the comprehensive plan. In fact, one of the appendices of the plan shows that cross-referencing between this comprehensive plan and the updated sustainability plan. And then on the right are just some examples of those departmental level plans that very much incorporate ideas and principles of sustainability. So as we generated, as city staff and myself generated the plan with all this feedback, these were some of the core considerations that came out. So sustainability it's a complex and interdepartmental cross-cutting idea, right? And so how do you create a plan that acknowledges how sustainability is already integrated into all these other plans and avoid that potential for any misalignment? You know, one plan says the community will do this, another plan says that. So that was a huge piece of consideration. The other is that we have a strategic planning, a robust strategic planning process at this point as a municipality. And so how do we create a live guiding sustainability plan that very much is community-wide in its scope, but is really integrated into that strategic planning process? And you know, how can we provide for realistic tracking and reporting that is not so onerous that that's all we're doing is spending staff time tracking and reporting? So these are some pretty foundational considerations as we got into the structure, finalizing the structure of the plan. So any questions on just the history or context there before jumping into review of the structure of the plan? So this is, as I just said, the structure. I presented this, I believe, before, so we'll go through this pretty quickly, but you know, we have the vision and the overarching priorities are really those umbrella concepts driving the plan. Then the implementation strategies are very much what we'll keep coming back to in terms of how the plan is implemented. We have 5 sectors of environmental sustainability, and then those sectors have principles and objectives which really drive down further the details around what that sector is concerned with. So for instance, energy or water. And then the action the actions and the sustainability action report. We'll spend some time talking about this, but that is actually pulled out of this plan. And this plan commits to an annual process for that action reporting, very similar to the approach that the strategic planning process uses, where we don't want a full revamp and update of the sustainability plan every single year. Of course, we want this to be able to last, let's say 5 or more years at least. And so, but priorities change, opportunities change, and so to codify those actions into this plan at the time, just a lot of feedback that wouldn't be the most appropriate approach. And so that action reporting, the commitment to that action reporting process is really where those actions and that annual tracking live. So I just wanted to call that out and highlight that. The vision for sustainable Durango. Durango is a community committed to achieving carbon neutrality, preserving our natural environment, conserving resources, maintaining our unique character, and improving quality of life for the benefit of present and future generations of residents, visitors, and neighboring communities.
I have a question for
Yes.
you, Marty. It may be within this context of this vision, but could you define what sustainable means in the context of a city? What does it mean?
Sure. So Webster's, no, I'm just kidding.
I didn't see it anywhere else in the plan, so.
Sure, and I think the challenge with sustainability is you have that general concept of something that can be sustained, of course. From an environmental sustainability perspective, it really is looking at our resource consumption and can our use of resources, both in what we are consuming, but also what we are putting back into our environment. Can the level of that be sustained? And also the impacts, the environmental impacts that we as a community maybe don't have control over. Are we responding, are we planning and responding in such a way that we can be resilient as a community to those impacts? So for instance, warmer, drier climate, things like that. So those are the general themes of sustainability from a community planning standpoint, but I agree that we could pull out some more robust definitions.
I think it might be a really good idea because, you know, sustainable. I mean, like, that means a lot of different things. And I like when you mentioned the resiliency. I think that if that's a prime component of sustainability, you know, us being able to shift and adjust and be flexible based upon gas and oil emissions or climate change or whatever it is, lack of water in our rivers. I think that might be very, very helpful for me when I'm talking with people about sustainable.
Sure, absolutely. I can call that out more. We can call that out more specifically in the plan. And I would say pages 5 through 7 are sort of that background and definition of scope and of sustainability, but it can be called out more directly.
Yeah, I think it would be really good to have a, you know, a 1 or 2 sentence thing to be able to explain what that is so that everybody knows it rather than 3 pages trying to explain what is sustainable means.
Sure.
Thank you.
It's quite the request, but I will work on it.
I know, but it's the same as creating a vision statement.
Yeah.
You have to be concise and you have to be to the point and you have to in your mind know what you're really trying to do. And that, for me, that makes my conversations with people much easier if I'm really grounded in what the words I'm using mean and what the concepts mean.
Absolutely. Thank you. So moving one level down from the vision are the 4 overarching priorities. And so these were identified as things that weave throughout what the plan is addressing. So greenhouse gas emissions and renewable electricity, resiliency, specifically resiliency to the impacts of a changing climate and what that means for our environment, health and well-being benefits of sustainability and connection with our environment, healthy environment and natural spaces and systems, and then equity as the 4th priority. The sectors that were identified for the final version of the plan, there was a lot of discussion around how to categorize sustainability. Sustainability is, by its very nature, about interconnections and removing boundaries between of areas of focus, but categorization is helpful for planning. And so nearly all sustainability frameworks have some type of categorization. City of Durango landed on this. It aligns with the Lead for Cities framework. It also aligns relatively closely to several departments within the city. And it also focuses in on the fact that this is environmental sustainability and resilience alignment with that area of the strategic plan. So there's some discussion around, you know, does sustainability mean financial sustainability? Does it mean social sustainability or political engagement? I mean, just to your point, Councillor Baxter, the definition of sustainability and the scope of what that means can really be expanded pretty far. And so these sectors really hone in on environmental sustainability specifically. The indicators are a major piece of the plan, and these are, again, mirroring the structure of the city's strategic planning process. We're measuring what matters, and these indicators are designed to be very high level. They're things like community-wide greenhouse gas emissions, total community-wide waste sent to the landfill, total community-wide water consumption, and these are very much going to be telling us as a community, how are we doing when it comes to our resource consumption and what we're putting back into the natural environment and how we are utilizing resources as a community. I would say the majority of discussions and feedback from staff and community members has centered around these indicators, because I think that is at the core of what is going to drive our work as a community. And then again, circling back on that action reporting process that I highlighted, this was built off of the positive feedback from the public and council around the year-end sustainability report that was provided in early January of 2022. And this reporting process provides three main functions. It's an opportunity to update indicator measurements and tracking, an update on our lead for cities status and certification, assuming that is still the framework that we choose to go to utilize as a community. And then it will provide a status update for actions related to the objectives and the indicators in each sector. And so again, really working to integrate this into what's already being done with the sustainability, or excuse me, with the strategic planning process, not to create a redundant amount of work for staff, but also to really highlight what actions and what projects are being done that year and plan for the coming year, specifically that address the sustainability, the sectors of sustainability and progress towards our objectives and impact the indicators that are called out in the plan. And that's it for the presentation. And at this point, we can pull up the plan, and I will pull it up on Zoom as well and just discuss additional pieces of feedback.
Marty, can you touch on the next steps? File and to
Oh, yes, thank you. So this is council's opportunity today and in the coming weeks to provide specific feedback on the plan. Anywhere from wordsmithing, the vision, or a single sentence on page 10, all the way to feedback on more larger considerations for the plan structure, things like that. I'm still getting final feedback from city staff and public stakeholders. So we'll integrate all of council at the June 7th regular city council meeting for formal adoption.
So on the natural systems and ecology indicators on page, I guess it says 37.
Yes.
There's tree and vegetated cover area % of total within city limits. So there's a couple of things that encompasses a lot of things. So there's water usage, but there's also, without trees, we're a warmer community. So there's more air conditioning or more effects of trying to stay cooler. There are other health related things without having trees that aren't just about, well, so there's heat, there's the quality of the air, there's all of that. And I'm concerned that I've talked with a couple of people lately, and I'm concerned that, and I mentioned it to you before, that if we plant a desert, we become a desert.
Sure.
So how do we make sure we avoid that? And then we also have some conflicting things within what some of the projects that I'm seeing lately come through planning. For example, instead of having mulch or grass on in between sidewalks and roads, we're doing rock mulch. And even our own arborist says that's really, really bad for the plants, because the heat reflected off the rocks requires the plants to need more water, or not even with the appropriate amount of water, they might not be sustainable because of the heat reflection off of them, drying them out from the outside. So I'm really concerned that we're not integrating that concept into the things that we're asking for through planning. And I understand, at first blush, it sounds like, oh, this is great. We're not watering more things, or rocks are easier to take care of. But even the city arborist sees that that's a challenge, that's actually might be going in the wrong direction. So I just want to make sure that we're doing a really, really good assessment of that, because I think heating up our environment is, through lack of having green, actually goes the opposite direction of what we want to do. It actually enhances climate change in a bad way.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I think you also touched on, some of the challenges and the intersections of what we're trying to achieve with the plan. Plants consume water. We divert water from the animus to water landscaping, but that landscaping cools our community, it provides habitat for animals, just enjoyment of green spaces in our community, but it uses water. And so there is going to be a balance. And that's where I think I've been talking with the city arborist around the best way to have those indicators set for trees. The city for years has done a tree inventory for city-owned trees. I think moving forward, there's some pretty exciting GIS measurement opportunities, not just for trees, but for other things. So completely agree that, keeping an eye on total vegetative cover, and then, in the action report and the updates, we can say, here's what we've done to ensure that trees in our community are being planted using best practices.
So we expand our percentage of trees because we're planting trees.
Right.
And one of the reasons why we're planting trees is because some trees are dying, and we have this happen downtown all the time.
Right.
Trees on the roads die because it's not in a conducive environment. Trees need like evaporation and transpiration also, because they absorb it through their leaves. They don't just absorb it through the ground. And so I'm concerned that in our efforts to increase our percentage of tree coverage, we're planting trees to do that, and not just looking at the overall health of the trees and the community. And the right kind of grass, the right kind of bushes, the right kind of things that help trees survive, and the trees then create more shade, and then the bushes and the grass grow better, and they need less water when they have that symbiotic relationship with each other.
And so what I'm hearing, I could go back to the city arborist and say, perhaps one of the indicators could be measuring percent tree loss every year. And that would be an indicator to say, what is our, not just planting new trees, but what is our maintenance procedures? What are we achieving through those, and what can we tell from that data?
Yeah, and why are we losing those trees? Is there a way, I think of the avenues that go across Main Street. There's been numerous places where trees, the whole thing just died, and it wasn't a disease. So it's just one of my concerns.
Sure. I just wanted to interject a little bit about, so we have the plan, might need a little more tweaking, get it to you and get it adopted, but then it's about implementation. And I think our landscaping standards really need a revisit, because I think they're a little bit all over the boards. We do really good in some places, and we plant bluegrass in other places where it probably doesn't belong. So we recognize that, and I think we have a good system in place to do regular land use code amendments that works through the planning commission and the council over the course of the year. So I don't know what we might have queued up on landscaping at this point in time, but I think we recognize now that this plan is in place, and a number of the other plans that are already been in place a couple of years, we continue to look at these things, and the landscaping standards is one of those areas that does need work.
Yeah, and the impacts of what decisions we're making around it.
I think your point on, do we want to be a desert or not a desert, is a good point, and it's something we probably need to reflect on a little bit. Because I don't think there's been that decision made other than Mother Nature heading us in a certain direction. But the water consumption issue comes into play. But I think a little more refined look at landscaping and landscaping standards for new and redevelopment is really important as we move forward with this implementation of this program.
And I would highlight another related to that, another item on the natural systems and ecology indicators, the fourth down, severe drought number of weeks per year. That's data that we can get from the state of Colorado. There was feedback on that to say, well, what good is that to track? Because Durango can't control that. We get a drought or we don't in a given year. And I through those discussions, really came to the conclusion that it is important to track those things, even some of these things that we don't have direct control over, because it informs planning around, say, landscaping standards, or even larger discussions of water use planning. And the city, of course, has our drought management plan. But so you'll see that some of these indicators are things that our projects are very much as a municipality or community-wide efforts are very much going to address and impact. I think a lot of great examples across the board, but some around transportation and development patterns. You know, transit riders served per year is very much directly associated with the transit services we're providing, while some of these other indicators are what you would say, well, they're just telling us the state that we're operating with it.
Sure. Like the amount of water in the snowpack every year, that
Exactly.
has an impact. And so when is it going to run off, and how much are we going to get? That's it, yeah, critical. Any counselors, questions?
Jessica? Oh, then I'll go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mari, thank you for that document and the updated version. It's quite extensive. I think it covers a lot of topics, very broad. It pulls in so much data from other departments. So sometimes I think, do we need to really have another report that pulls it, and then another report pulls from the other side? But I think it is very good to have that document. It's very important. So glad to see it at this state. I think one question I have, or request, not sure how difficult it would be, when you do the action reporting. So that table, I think, is the last table in the report, but maybe you have a different format later on. I would, if it's possible, would like to see it in key categories. And I'm going to just give you a couple of terms here. One being non-physical items, which would be policies, programs, initiatives, memberships, certifications. Another one would be, that's maybe not even part of that report, the metrics and indicators that you mentioned, just to see how we're doing, what is the trend, etc., to show results. But a separate category for actual physical items, projects that physically change the course of, because in the end, that's what we want to do. Yeah? And that would be, for example, I mean, there's a big list in there. Solar panel projects, not in general, we do solar panel, but we did this project. This is what was done, completed by that date. Connectivity projects to schools and the Animas River Trail, Smart 160 into downtown.
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't show in a metric, but it will show that we have better bike use, because in the end we want to reach a goal, not necessarily have a paper that shows, hey, we did. Right. Even though that's nice too. Electric vehicle projects, another example. Wildlife containers was mentioned. So I think, to me personally, it would be nice to see what physically do we do, what other non-physical issues project do we do, which is, sometimes it's more nice to have a paper, or it's good to do education. All these things are super important. And then the metrics that you end up doing. Is it possible, or is it difficult to separate it out a little bit?
I think that's a great idea, because I think, and I imagine the action reporting process evolving year after year, certainly based on feedback from council and city staff and the public. I think that's an excellent idea to break those out by categories, because I think that's also how people think of what the city is doing for the community. Infrastructure, or is it services, or is it plans and studies? Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and the reason for me, when I speak to people, if I have to go through your report, I mean, I have to do a whole bunch to figure out.
Yeah.
We finished the solar project at the water treatment plant.
Right.
But there's a whole bunch of projects. It would be nice to say, okay, here, this is it. What do you want to know? I got all these projects listed right here.
Yeah.
So appreciate that.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for that.
And my question was, one of them was related to that same line of questioning, and I had sent it, asked you before, I believe, in the email, which was, can we, that action reporting is great, and it's an excellent report, by the way. It's great to see it all in writing, but to get to the piece of paper, how do we know that we're getting to a 50% reduction, for example, by 2030? How are we gonna, how do you measure that? How do you numerically see that? It's just really hard for me
Yeah.
to arbitrarily understand that and to say that we've met that goal
Absolutely.
and that we're on track.
And that it's not like too less of a goal or too much of a goal. Like
Right,
we've
yeah.
been getting email, I mean, we get emails all the time about sustainability, but like just the other day, there's a bunch of students at DHS that are actively involved, as you know, you got that email. But I had one email me today that said, I think you could do it 100% by 2035. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Like, what's the number? Like, how do you measure?
They
And
want us to have the
and
goal.
yeah, exactly. And so, and if we can say like, this is on track for success, or we're hoping to beat it, or like, how do we respond to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about the indicators, some of these indicators are already, I could give you the numbers tomorrow. They're already things that the city has systems to track. We can do annual reporting, something we can even do monthly or daily reporting. Some of them, like particularly greenhouse gas emissions, require a full city inventory. And so that looks at what's considered scope 1 emissions, which are when we are burning mostly from burning fossil fuels, although other direct emissions within our boundaries of the study area. Scope 2 are emissions associated with electricity consumption. And then we currently don't do scope 3. Those are more challenging, and they relate to, if we, for instance, pour some concrete to repave the trail, the production of that concrete released greenhouse gas emissions somewhere else in the world. And then by us installing concrete, we're sort of associated with that. That gets very challenging from a reporting standpoint. So that's the scope of greenhouse gas emissions inventory. And that's done, we would put out a proposal for a consulting firm to come in and provide us those numbers. That's something that's would be pretty challenging to do in-house. And then also some of these analysis are going to be yearly. Some of them, because they require a full study to be done periodically, we're only realistically going to be able to update those every 2 or 3 years. And I think when we do a study on I think particularly with greenhouse gas emissions, because that's really one of the 4 priorities of the plan, there will also be tied to that discussions of actions and what are we doing at a community-wide scale, reporting on LPA's progress on their associated emissions with our electricity service provider. Yeah.
And so when would we maybe be considering doing one of those next?
Very soon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm looking at the budget to potentially do one in 2023. Our last looks at our 2016 emissions, and it was performed in 2019. And so we're already coming up on that. If we want to do it every 3 to 5 years, we're already coming up on that window again. I think with this plan in place, we'll see what the budget allows for 2023, but 2023 or 24 would be my desired timeline.
I think I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say the interval that you apply, I hope it benefits projects that have been completed.
Yes.
So that we see actual drops or better, whatever.
Right.
Results. So maybe that's worthwhile considering when you time certain, because you have a baseline.
Right.
So if you are 5 years or 3 years out, it doesn't matter. But if you do a big project, after 3 years and you just did your study, then you're going to have a whole different number the year after.
Exactly.
So that would be just a little side note.
What is curious is, we're kind of swimming upstream a little bit because we grow as a community. So, we want to see the trends going in the right direction. Yet we add facilities or the community grows and we add vehicles. And so, it is a little bit of an upstream battle, but it's still very trackable.
Well, if you're looking at per capita emissions, that's how you account for that essentially.
It's my comment.
Yeah.
You have the total emission, but you also go by growth and other factors. So, and every time there's a big drop because you did whatever, the solar panels, then you will probably have a note saying we did the solar projects. And therefore we see that dip, but it doesn't matter. This is too much detail, but I think.
No, this is great. And because one of the things that we'll be putting together throughout the rest of 2022 is the structure of this action report and the indicator reporting. So this feedback is very useful. Just a couple things to point out there with that comment. Councilor or Mayor Pro Tem Youssef.
Sure.
So we are, yeah, it's a long title.
We gotta get that sorted.
Yeah.
MPT.
The scope of measuring some of these indicators, we will be able to say it's community-wide, or can we hone in exactly what are residential consumers, what's that impact, or what's our municipal consumption. The other thing I would point out is we have some really exciting updates from LPA in terms of their the greenhouse gas intensity of our electrical grid. And so if we did a study here in the next year or two, we would have a baseline probably similar to what we've been seeing historically, and then very exciting to say that we should anticipate some pretty large drops, at least associated with our electrical emissions. So.
I had one other question. It was along the lines that Jessica was suggesting about the high school. Kids and their great outreach that they're doing. And this week is all their action week, and they have all this education and activity plan with their new green team that they're setting up and everything. And just, I'm wondering, are we doing anything like that as a city? Do we do any education week, action week, pull in the community in any way to get the community involved? And it sounds like a lot of fun. I mean, they're doing things like, I know they had like Clean Day in Durango here on May 27th coming up. But some of those things, they really bring the community together. And like Kim was saying, the community is very passionate about this topic. And there's a lot of people that would probably like to engage and participate if there's a way to help. So I don't know, do we ever think about something like that? Earth Day?
We did participate with one of the partners on the Earth Day celebrations this year. So I would say Earth Day is an annual opportunity for that. But I hear there's always more, whether it's leading some type of event or outreach engagement effort as the city, or partnering with community organizations.
I was gonna say like the green, was it green drinks, or there's like a bunch of different
That'd be fun.
community sustainability things.
Anyway, just
Yeah.
throwing that
No,
out there
thank
for
you for that.
consideration.
Yeah.
Just a couple things I wanted to bring up. Thank you so much. I thought the report was great. I actually liked all the different areas, because that's like we were talking about in our strategic plan meeting, how we have sustainability as a goal, but really it's part of everything if you're going to be economically sustainable. And so, and I think that when I look at our strategic plan, that's what I struggle with. But I just wanted to make some points. Like we have some things, some performance metrics in our strategic plan. Are we going to update those as we have, because we have, our transportation plan, our automobile plan, we have all these plans, and I just want to make sure, because when I go and look at something and tell, a kid calls me up the other day and was like, we haven't banned plastic bags. What are you doing? And I can pull it up and be like, well, we are going to install solar panel power generation in a facility every year. And we're going, I can at least list things we're doing, what we've been successful at, and that sort of thing. And so I just want to make sure that's going to get updated to reflect the current plan. Yes.
Absolutely. So two pieces that the indicators, the way I envision is the indicators are sort of one step higher than a lot of those project metrics. They're longer term.
Yes.
Of course. But the strategic plans, indicators, and efforts have very much informed the indicators in the sustainability plan, and vice versa. So the short answer is yes, absolutely. And we're aiming to reduce redundancy in any of that reporting, align all of that reporting, and I think once this plan is adopted, the sustainability action report and the strategic planning process will grow together again in order to just increase that alignment, and again increase efficiency, reduce any redundancy around what we're tracking and reporting. So I see those two processes continuing to evolve and inform each other.
And I guess too, like the feedback I typically get is, we're not doing enough.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you get the same feedback, right? And it's hard for me to say, well, we have this goal in 2035 when it's 2022 now. And, what are we doing now to reach that goal? So I get, yes, we have overreach goals and that's like what this is. And so it's like a little different, but kind of not like, we need to take actionable steps all the time to get there. And it would be great for us to be able to communicate what it is.
Maybe
easier.
intermediary goals.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I guess, that would be about 10% by, no, just
Well,
kidding.
But then if you're on track, or maybe
Yeah.
that it's gonna take actually 6 years to make that big a difference. So
when people say we're not doing enough, I want to be able to, understand that their vision of what enough is probably greater than, as we're a growing city, we have other things we have to overcome, but at the same time, just balance that.
I completely agree.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
On the same page.
On the same page, and I think we get the same emails.
I'm sure. If not, I'll CC you.
Great, please do. Yes, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Any other questions from council, comments? Thank you so much, Marty.
Great.
Really appreciate the update. It's nice
Yeah.
to be kept up to date and good work on a great report.
I appreciate it. Thanks
Thank
very
you.
much. Feel free to email me directly with any direct feedback for changes
Okay.
on the draft. And then that will be brought to you for the June 7th regular meeting or
Okay, thank you.
thanks so much.
Appreciate it. I know, I didn't do that. Fred, I adjourned the meeting.
You may leave.
Right. You can all go, let's go eat dinner.